Welcome back. How was lunch in the heat? We strategically had a shaded area, a sunny area, and an air-conditioned area. So I hope you found the place where you're most comfortable. Welcome back to our final session at the Business of Beauty Global Forum 2024. I'm Imran Ahmed, founder and CEO of the Business of Fashion. So much of what we've discussed thus far, so much of the beauty industry is focused on what's on the outside. In this session, we're going to focus on beauty from the inside out. More and more of us are beginning to understand that what we put inside our bodies, how we manage stress, and how we care for ourselves also impacts how we look and feel. Though some ancient wellness practices, rituals, and products have existed for centuries, there are also new wellness solutions grounded in modern medicine and new technologies. In this session, we will explore the full spectrum of wellness to help you understand both the market opportunities and what authentic personal practice looks like. To get us started, our first speaker, Alexander Gilks, co-founder of venture studio Squared Circles, which just last week announced a $40 million Series A round backed by private equity firm L. Catterton, who are here with us today. Alex and his team have backed brands like Nutrafol and Magic Molecule that focus on innovation and ingredients. In fact, Squared Circles research shows where the future of wellness is going, including how customers are moving away from the idea of instant gratification and towards the idea of longer-term health benefits. To learn more, please welcome Alexander Gilks.
Ladies and gentlemen, a very good afternoon to you all. My hope is that over the next 10 to 15 minutes, I can awaken you all from your post-lunch slumber, whatever meal you're streaming during or after online. I'm here today to talk a little bit about where culture has moved post-pandemic. Now, we don't necessarily want to dwell on a woeful period of recent history, but of course the pandemic shook us all. It caught us unaware. It was the deadliest medical crisis since the 1918 Spanish influenza, which affected at that time a third of the world's population, 500 million people. It came out of nowhere. We were unprepared. It created a 25% increase in depression and anxiety, 14% increase in alcohol consumption, and 41% reported episodes of heavy drinking. 30% increase in 2020 versus 2019 in overdose deaths, and a 42% percentage of the adult population reported weight gain, with an average 29 pounds per adult and 41 pounds for millennials and Gen Z. Now, it of course changed our values. Health became the new wealth. No one represented more than the buff Mr. Bezos. As Amazon stocks were ripping, so were his abs. But 82% of US consumers now consider wellness a top priority, 73% in the UK and 87% in China. The global wellness market is estimated to be worth approximately $1.8 trillion. Now that of course encompasses all the types of peripheral market TAM, as wellness tourism and your celery juice and your cold plunge and all else, but it is an astonishing, monumental market size. And the US is out there in front with a $480 billion market and seeing up to a 10% compound annual growth rate, which is huge velocity. And of course, during that time, we changed our values to emerge from more of a fusion of professional and personal life. We changed our work-life balance. We focused on preventative care, on vaccines, on checkups, on immunity, on hygiene. We became more aware of health issues and immunity. Mental health became mainstream, along with sexual wellness. And we looked healthier. We wanted to put skinimalism as the new beauty. Looking healthy became the new beauty. Now, I had to double check that after the mob wife look that I heard about yesterday, but it is in fact the rising trend. We started exercise regimes at unprecedented rates and abandoned them too. We took to the outdoors for our well-being. 164 million Americans participate in a monthly outdoor activity, and there was a 20% uptick during the pandemic. We were somewhat oxymoronically health and fitness-obsessed overweight alcoholics. And when we look at this overall data, we at Squared Circles conducted an index research to look at 3,000 of the 270 million adults in this country to really understand what are the external factors we care most about. Number one, it is the food we eat, clean, safe food, followed by water, followed by prevention of disease, and slipping into 6, sustainability. Overall, our number one priority is eating clean, safely, and healthy, and what we put into our bodies. As for wellness purchases, number one is appearance, hair and skin, good news for you all, health, vitamins, etc., supplements, medications, then fitness in third, nutrition in fourth, and fifth is sleep, which encompasses everything from gravity blankets to melatonin. And as for sustainability, 85% of Americans acknowledge the reality of climate change, but only 30% are willing to place it at the top of the problems that we face in the future. And on average, the US consumer will only pay a 10% premium for a more sustainable product. And so, overall, we emerge from this culture of instant gratification. Everything now, the quick fix, everything that was emblematic of the boomers, live fast, die young, to a culture of optimizers, a culture of future-proofers. And we teamed up the Hofstede Institute to really look into this, and they've been analyzing all this data for decades, and this is the biggest societal jump we have made. 2017 to 2023, we jumped 30%, and that data didn't just start in 2017, I assure you. The US has always been out there in front. We've always been a future-looking a nation and culture of inventors and of innovators versus, for example, Europe that is stuck more in the past and look at history, and I'm not going to call out the French in particular here. Now, we're also now about deferred gratification. We care less about the quick fix. We want to really get ahead of these issues and start routines that will help us prepare for any unexpected health risk. And Gen Z is 2 times more likely to optimize than their boomer counterparts. It's more me than we, sadly, but there are lots of new trends that we need to think through. And so, hands up if you recognize this fine fellow. Some of you, not all of you. This gentleman, some of you may consider creepy, some of you may consider heroic. However, Brian Johnson is the beacon of longevity. This gentleman has 100 different routines every day. He spends $2 million per annum trying to reverse his biological age. He even goes as far as swapping blood vials with his 17-year-old son. All in a quest to look younger, feel younger, and actually be younger at a cellular level. But what is interesting is that Brian is not alone. 1/3 of Americans want to live forever. The rest, by and large, until about 90. And some of those we surveyed even think that disease, or rather death, is a disease that we might cure in our lifetime. So, what will we do to live longer? 1/3 would take a longevity supplement. 1/3 would say they would never drink alcohol again. 40% would start a new sleep routine. And 16% would change jobs. And 25% for Gen Z and millennials. And also, 15% of Gen Z said that they would spend between $200 to $400 per month on longevity and prolongation of life. So, another trend that we all know about. We moved healthcare from hospital to the home. I'm talking, of course, diagnostics, not surgery, thank God. But the expenditures are expected to reach $201 billion by 2028. It is a huge booming market. The fundamentals have, of course, been driven by numerous different factors. Telehealth has been hugely on the rise. There's a 154% increase in the early stage of the epidemics due to the alleviation of regulation, blah, blah, blah. But 35% of Americans are now wearing traceable health devices. They're wearing biomonitors for glucose levels. They're wearing their Whoops, their Auras, whatever else. to monitor their key statistics from HRV to whatever else it may be. We're becoming more medically literate, and I think we'll hear more about that this afternoon. We're starting to think about endocrine disruption, gut health, oral microbiomes. There's a huge rise in at-home diagnostics tests. Obviously, we're now moving to things like portable EKGs and portable blood monitoring. And most importantly, we can do all of this at a distance and at greater expedience than the doctor's surgery. And so supplements, too, are also on the rise. What is interesting is that as we think about at-home rituals, supplements are a huge part of our own self-prevention, our self-medication, and 29% would take supplements for cognitive function, 24% for immunity, and 20% for skin and hair. So, what does this say about what really moves the needle? We need to understand the science, and we want clinical effectiveness. It's a top purchasing factor for 50% of the UK and US consumers. And bizarrely, only 20% reported that same motivation for clean and natural. Efficacy is the key leading ingredient in motivating buying wellness products. Scientific credibility is the second. And the third is doctor recommendations, which is giving rise to the docfluencers. We're now following more than ever trichologists, dermatologists, nutritionists, and weight management. We've all seen Novo Nordisk rise to become the 15th most valuable company in the world at a market cap level. 13% of Americans have used GLP-1 agonists. But they're not all taking it for the curation of morbid obesity. Some see it as a key part of long-term optimization. 86% of those who've taken it said that they are eating and drinking less and changing lifestyle habits. 29% are more active, 9% more sexually active. It's changing radically how we eat, how we shop, and how we overall think about our overall routines. And what is also interesting is whilst for insurance you need to have a certain BMI, a lot of people are taking it for minor incremental weight loss. A huge amount of people are taking it for weight losses of 15 pounds or less. And 42% of that group are millennials and Gen Z. And so we wanted to think a little bit more about these mindset evolutions. As a venture studio, you're always trying to get ahead of the cultural shifts, the seismic shifts in behaviors and norms. And so we teamed up with the Culture Factor and the Hosted Institute to really understand how had the mindset evolved post-pandemic. And so we surveyed 3,000 individuals and really took a deep dive on the 270 million Americans. And this very maximal weather map before you gives you a distillation of the 4 key cohorts that we identified. You have the checked out. The checked out has actually retreated in long-term optimization. They're overrepresented in the boomers. They do not give a damn about future-proofing. They're all about carpe diem. They're all about being highly skeptical of wellness and all else. And they want to focus more on living fast and potentially dying young. The modest means 64 million adults. They represent the US average. 61% female, overrepresented in the 56 to 65 age group. This group would love to think about optimization, but they are focused on survival. With the huge rise in cost of living and everything else, they need to put food on the plate, food on the table, and that is their core mode of branding. Then we have the passive activists. They're idealists. They're neurotic perfectionists. They're kind of 18 to 45 is overrepresented this cohort. They are 10% more long-term oriented than the US average population. They use social media as their search tool. Their pressure on themselves to optimize creates enormous anxiety, so they tend to indulge in the serotonin-inducing purchases like the Shein's. And they also look to do slightly better, and they will pursue and indulge in things like vegan beauty, etc., because they understand that it is part of what they need to do to be more responsible. But the group that is driving change is this group that we have termed the conscious maximalists. A group that is oxymoronically at this opposing edge of being highly maximal in how they pursue life, travel, diet, indulgence, but increasingly conscious in how they scrutinize what they're putting into their body and what they're putting out into the world. And they are leading the cultural charge towards long-term optimization. 46 million individuals in the US fit within that cohort. So, what can we learn from this group? It's not a particular eureka moment, but it's a nice little summary, I think, of what we've heard a lot of over the last couple of days. They want pleasure, performance, and purpose. They're not going to compromise on poor-tasting, plant-based alternates. They really want to make sure that whatever they're consuming truly is better. They want to scrimp and splurge. Their house brands will live alongside the Barbara Sturms and the Augustinas Baders. And if you're a little bit like me this morning, being like a pig in mud with all the swag that we got, you start a day with the athletic greens and the eye patch, and I smell like a duty-free beauty counter at the airport right now. But they are true maximalists. They want to indulge in everything. They want options. And their influence, their ecosystem, is truly driven by the doctors, the nutritionists, the authorities, and increasingly so. They want routines too. They create routines because they want to get ahead of future issues. And they're starting those routines early. They are thinking about hair loss in their 20s before there are signs as a way of getting ahead of the future onset. So, which brands are winning with them? The brands that are winning with them are those that do have routines, those that are really thinking about the future-proofing, those that are building around pain points that can grow over a long lifetime value. They're underpinned by science, they're endorsed by the scientific community, they're optimizing whole body health, inside and out, and increasingly inside in order to project out. They're the auras, they're the prolon diets, they're the K18s, they're the Solons, they're the Phylas, they're the magic molecules, they're the Everedens of the world, and so many of the brands that are well represented here today. And so, how does this impact how we think about building brands and shaping brands? Well, as a venture studio, we use the classic human-centered IDEO design approach, stage-gated approach from discovery, ideation, validation, all else. But as this particular pertinence is a consideration to all of you, you want to start with a pain point. Start with a consumer pain point that really creates a recurring daily need around which we can create a prolonged routine. Is this a problem that we can build preventative solutions around? 2, validation. Build that pain point with scientific solutions, data-driven claims, peer reviews, published findings, and buy-in from scientists. Socialization, radical transparency, uphold sustainability and ethics, be inclusive, enable consumer love, virality, and feedback. And of course, embrace the conscious maximalist. And this is what we take into account and was very much part of the consideration for building Freaks of Nature. And so, after all that talk about health, I'll see you all this evening with a sturdy cocktail in hand at the bar. Thank you all so much, and have a wonderful end to this conference. And Priya and Imran, thank you.
The first time I met Alex, he was running a really cool auction startup, and I saw him auctioneering in a room of like 200 people at a dinner, and he was such an amazing speaker, so I knew he would deliver that brilliantly. Thank you very much, Alex. One of the really key points from Alex's talk was that modest means segment, right? We know there's a large cohort of customers that are interested in wellness, the conscious maximalists. But the multi-billion-dollar industry as it exists today, the wellness industry, is excluding entire groups of people. At times, it's also co-opting ancient traditions and cultural practices. So in our next talk, we want to dive deeper on this idea of making wellness accessible to wider groups of people. Manoj Diaz is a meditation teacher, brand consultant, and co-founder of the mindfulness studio Open, who many of you were able to experience yesterday in our breathwork session. Sandra Lanshan Chu is a traditional Chinese medicine specialist and the founder of Lanshan. And Michelle Cassandra Johnson is an activist, healer, and author. They will now join Priya Rao to discuss the wellness gap and share the steps we can take to make wellness more accessible for all.
Hello again. I'm really excited about this talk. This is kind of a personal passion project of mine, and I've got the best people here to do this with me. Michelle, I'd love to start with you. We know wellness is such a buzzy and topical word right now, and it's amazing that it's become so mainstream, but it's also not working for everyone. It's not working for certain segments of the population, whether it's less affluent people. It's not working for Black and brown women. I'd love to understand why you think that is. As it mainstreams, why is it still so inaccessible?
Yeah, so I've been working at the intersection of wellness and social justice for many years. As a Black woman, as a racial equity educator, and someone who's worked in community and with corporations and organizations and in wellness and spiritual communities about how to radicalize those spaces so they are more inclusive. My interest in engaging and disrupting how wellness operates as far as the way it's exclusive and has left out many groups of people who are at the margins really came from an experience of entering a yoga teacher training, being one of the few people of color in that space, and engaging in a liberatory practice when the conditions in place were actually not for liberation for all, because only a certain group of people could access the space. And I think that this speaks to, and in my experience in that particular training, and that's happened in many spaces, many wellness, many spiritual, many yoga spaces, that space mirrored the larger culture, which has defined who deserves to be well, who is worthy of wellness. I mean, we exist in a culture where there actually is a hierarchy of bodies and where dominance plays out and manifests itself in many ways that we can feel, that we've experienced, that we are also implicated in. And so it was enlightening to engage in a practice and path rooted in liberation, and yet so many people didn't have access to it. But this is, again, a manifestation of larger systems saying who's valid, who's worthy here, who's beautiful, right? And what does that look like? And therefore, that determines who has access. I also think this speaks to what wellness means, as if there's a one-size-fits-all definition or response to what wellness means. And in my experience, as I've engaged with many different parts of the industry of wellness, often the system or the institution is telling me what wellness looks like versus asking me, what do I need to be well? And so these are some of the reasons that why I think so many people are left out of wellness. And finally, what I'll say is that, and in preparation for this, I was talking about my experience interacting with the healthcare system and how I go to the doctor, and the doctor assumes that I don't actually have wisdom about my body or what I need. And in fact, I'm interacting with a system that's saying, this is what you need, this is who you are, this is how your body operates. Again, as if all of our bodies operate in the same way. We don't actually share the same ancestral experiences which often define, right, how our bodies respond in this context of wellness.
I'd love to answer the question, and it's a big one, but there's such a chasm between healthcare and wellness. And although we kind of are muddling them in between, there's so much inaccessibility. Why do you think that, and I think this is a question for all of y'all, as we try to become more well, whether that means, through longevity or, spa treatments or gua sha, that at the fundamental root of it, so many of us are still very sick. Manoj, you want to start?
Yeah, I think it's an important distinction between what Michelle was alluding to around what wellness is and what a lot of what we talk about is what optimization is. Is that to even get to the place that we can explore this concept of wellness, we have to move through so many systems that are really conspiring to not get us there. So we talk about longevity, it's a big emphasis right now, and we talk about different pills and practices, but really to get to the place where our bodies don't feel like they're under attack, We need to look at the systems around, food literacy and food education, affordable housing. We can't even get to that place. And once we're at that place, it feels like it's more accessible to talk about optimization.
Talk to me a little bit about, you kind of segued for me, but the idea of the treatments and supplements and remedies out there are very much for affluent people, the 1%. The Brian Johnsons of the world. And I'm wondering, what does it take away from all of us, when so many of these technologies, or even the supplements that you buy at Target or Walmart, are so expensive? What are we already creating barriers as we even start to broach the topic with the kind of treatments and solutions that we have out there now? What's your thoughts?
What it's taking away is money, basically. It's an interesting thing. As Andrew mentioned, the industry is $1.8 trillion right now, the wellness industry. Yet, mental health rates are rising, suicide in youth is rising, obesity rates are rising. So the question for me is wellness actually working? And there's an argument that it's probably not, but it's a very valuable industry right now. So what it's taking away is agency. It's talking about this individual choice that we have. For me, wellness isn't that complicated. If we have the education to know that we need to rest well, we need to prioritize social connection, we need to have some form of contemplative practice, we should walk 10,000 steps a day or move in any form, that is a foundation, that's a baseline of health. Then we can begin to explore some of these other optimization strategies, which I'm sure they're great and will help. But to even get there, you have to move through the socioeconomic conditions that so many of us are up against, the environmental conditions that so many of us are up against.
Sandra, I'd love to switch to you for a second. So many of the things that we're talking about now, holistic traditions and remedies, go way back. They go back to TCM, they go back to Ayurveda. And I think for a long time, these were kind of thought of as pseudosciences. They're not real, they don't work. Now they're kind of becoming a little bit more mainstream. There are brands and businesses that are getting funding around that, but a lot of them don't go back to the culture. Will you talk to me a little bit about that?
Yeah, well, I want to first say that it's not a pseudoscience in Asia, right? It is true medical care, right? And it served a population for thousands of years. And so it's a real bona fide medical system. So coming over here into the West, we've lost a lot of that validity and credibility because it is quite different. The way that we perceive the human body, what does wellness mean, is very different from how we perceive that in the Western world. So to more directly answer your question though, I think coming at it as a founder of a brand, I think that there's something that's being lost in the awareness of wellness, especially as it pertains to practices like Ayurveda, like TCM, which is that this is a real field of study. And then there's people that are dedicated to studying it. Like you have to go to school for 4 years and get a degree to practice Chinese medicine. And what I see right now in the wellness world is what is an expert? And what are we holding up as an expert and should we be? Because this is real medicine. Like I can give you advice about something through my social media and you might go home and do it. And what happens if you don't feel well because of something I said for you to do? And I have that awareness because as a practitioner, I am thinking about ethics, right? And this goes back to also what you were saying about accessibility is that when you for me as a practitioner, I'm constantly also thinking about the ethics of what I'm sharing, what I'm producing and selling. And that doesn't always jive with the, profit-making goal, right? Mm-hmm. It's not necessarily gonna up my profits to be thinking about that, but I have to think about the wellness of my patients and my clients, and our customers are those people to us. So we treat them with the same ethical treatment. Caring for their wellness means that you truly have to care about how your customer feels at the end of the day because of your influence. So I think that means that it's really important as wellness becomes a bigger part of beauty and as it becomes a bigger industry, We have to stay tethered to that, or we're going to lose something really important, and it's not going to be wellness anymore.
I find a lot of the brands out there, the businesses out there, and even the clinics and studios cherry pick a little bit of this, a little bit of that, whether it's from Ayurveda or Native American culture or TCM. What are we losing, by doing that? Because you're only getting, maybe half an explanation or half a history lesson, if that.
You're losing the power and the efficacy of the medicine. Because I'll give you an example. The way that so much of what shows up in beauty as ingredients, and so much of what people obsess over as supplements are just, when I look at it through the lens of Chinese medicine, having studied these herbs and ingredients that have been used for thousands of years, they're used in a very different way in Chinese traditional medicine. And so there's already that gap right there. So you've lost, to me, you lose the power of an ingredient if you don't understand its history, you don't understand how it's been used throughout history by the culture that carried that wisdom, right? And so I don't see any companies recognizing or acknowledging bakuchiol, for instance, is a trendy ingredient. That comes from Chinese medicine. We use that internally. It's a powerful herb that has a lot of benefits for longevity. Nobody's really talking about that. It's known as an alternative to retinol, right? And so it's like 1/8 of what that ingredient is and could be. So I think we're just losing a lot of the, I don't know if story is the right word, but we don't know what we're doing with our herbs and supplements. Should we be taking turmeric every day? Right? And also when we're leaving out the practitioners of medicine speaking to accessibility, you lose the messaging around, Chinese medicine can be as simple as stop drinking ice water and your gut biome will transform in the matter of 30 days. I've seen it happen a million times, right? So if we can stay tethered to people that are trained in the medicine and can really bring that to you in a safe, efficacious, and ethical way, then it serves you as a consumer, it serves the brands that are going to share that, and it serves wellness, right? And it actually is wellness if we can stay tethered to that.
Michelle, I'd love to go back to you. You were talking about your experience in healthcare, how, your doctor didn't believe what you were feeling or what you were thinking about your own body. But that also goes to practitioners and teachers. Like, who is believed? Who is credible? Is it a TikTok star? Is it you? What do you think the barriers are? And you personally, I would love to hear this. And of course you too, Manoj, because I know you've talked about this a lot. Just, getting the credibility and respect to be able to talk about this and for people to listen.
Yeah, I think it has to do with what I said earlier about a hierarchy of bodies and dominance and our beliefs around who deserves to be well. In my experience, I'm taking in messages all of the time about who's credible, about my credibility based on the identities I embody, about my credibility and the amount of power that I have based on my access to social and institutional power. I'm not saying I'm powerless. I don't believe that, but I live in a context that has put me into a box based on certain identities I embody, and that shapes how I move through the world. That shapes whether or not I'm respected or seen as a leader or seen as someone who's credible or an authority about my actual experience in this body. And that is what sometimes bumps up against systems who are telling me, they've created the boxes, and they're telling me, this is who you are, this is how you feel, we are more credible than you, we are to be believed. And I think this is such it's a significant issue in almost every institution. And I really am thinking about what you said, Sandra, because I'm thinking about what it actually means for me to say I deserve everyone believes to be well, and what it means for me to put conditions in place for everyone to be well, right? And that would require me to believe people when they share their experience with me and see them as a credible source. Right. So I think this is embedded and baked into institutions and within culture and cultural norms because of what we are internalizing about credibility and who is to be believed.
Manoj, what about for you? I mean, obviously you have a pretty sizable fan base. There's, investors knocking on your door, talking about open and very excited about the business that you've built. But I mean, do you always feel like people see you as credible? Do you think that's been something that you have benefited from or it's taken a long time to get there, or are you still getting those questions?
Yeah, I'm still getting those questions. And I'm convinced if I had a podcast, people would be knocking down my door. Like, I would be so much more wealthy than I am now if I had a podcast that was selling my own supplements, which feels like, when it comes to credibility, that's what people are really looking for, right? Like, who are these experts and what are they actually talking about? What are the sustainable, accessible solutions that they are providing? And I look at some of the people that were up on the presentation before, like a lot of them have podcasts, a lot of them have products. Mm-hmm. And so getting our information from there, for me, it's always very conflicting because I recognize that you have to be in a certain wealth class to be able to afford a lot of what they're saying. But a lot of it is, again, optimization. It's not like basic wellness. And basic wellness is a human right. Like, we shouldn't have to pay access for that. Optimization is great. If you have the access, then it's amazing. You can do all of that. But for me, that there's a tension between, when it comes to the practices, if I can just speak to that, around innovation and erasure. Like, innovation and on all of our practices, whether it's yoga, Chinese medicine, Buddhist meditation, where I come from, and breath work, they have to innovate to meet the demands of the audience and the generation that they're being spoken to. And the Buddha spoke about that as well. But what I'm seeing within the industry is the erasure of Black, brown, indigenous cultures and perspectives. And that for me it's a complicated scenario where, thousands of years of Ayurvedic, TCM, Vedic, tradition gets thrown out the door when there's a functional doctor talking about a product. And so for me, I get very animated when I talk about this subject, but I feel like there's something to really explore there around the erasure of voices that have wisdom that goes generations deep versus, a platform and a podcast.
How do we bridge that knowledge gap? I mean, you've got some pretty important people in the room here, and you guys are all authorities in your own right. But how do we stop talking about wellness as optimization, biohacking, or recognize that that's just one small part of it, and that does not exist without this fundamental piece? Like, what can we do?
I mean, I think we can remember we're working with humans, with people. We can humanize the consumers that we want to engage with our companies and our brands and our products. I think that bumps up against capitalism. That's what I think. And and you spoke to this, I think I can value all humans and I have a bottom line. And it means that I operate out of my values some of the time. And I'm like small, right? I'm not like the folks who are in this room with big companies and brands and businesses. And so I feel like when I remember I'm working with people and the more than human world as well, it changes how I show up. Mm-hmm. And I need to be transparent that I'm not always in alignment. Mm.
Right. What about for you, Sandra?
Yeah, I mean, I think that speaking of erasure, one of the things that's interesting about how Chinese medicine is represented is that we, as either the true professional practitioners of the medicine, don't really have a seat at the table. So if you look at like gua sha, which is a very famous viral trend, you don't see Chinese medicine embodied in it. I don't. As a Chinese medicine practitioner, I look at what's out there on social media. I don't recognize my own medicine. And I'm actually the only brand that has any kind of connection to the medicine, which I think is wild. Mm-hmm. Because gua sha is something that it requires a skill set to understand how to use safely. You know, there's a spectrum of gentle, safe use, and then when do you cross that line? So we need to, again, remember that practitioners carry this knowledge, and when you engage practitioners like you're doing in this conversation, which I think is truly an important step in bridging that gap. I think, you know, more of this is that gap so that we can help to spread the awareness of how we perceive wellness, the issues in wellness as practitioners. It's going to sound different than, you know, How do we optimize? How do we increase profits? There's always going to be that tension between wellness and the business of wellness, but we can't lose our connection to the ethical practice of anything that we're doing, whether that's gua sha, whether that's taking supplements, or whatever. Like we have to remember that these are medical systems.
Right. Something that I find something hard to wrap my head around sometimes is just that so many of these holistic traditions and practices are community-based. They're meant to be shared. They're meant to be, was yoga, did you ever pay for a yoga class in India? Back in the day. These are things that are supposed to be accessible for all. So I'm wondering, what does a wellness industry look like that's actually community focused and that's actually accessible to, and includes all people? Because it seems like right now, although we talk about community a lot, obviously, in all of our brands and businesses, it's not really being reflected in the work that's coming out there right now. What do you think, Manoj?
Yeah, I think the conversation tends to be very narrow, and there's no space for nuanced discussion when it comes to this. And this is a problem that so many smart people are trying to solve, but it's quick and easy to go with what's tried and tested and works and makes money. But we have, as a wellness industry, we have to have the ability to have these nuanced conversations. Michelle actually taught me this. When you walk into a room, ask yourself, who is not in the room? And if you're a BIPOC individual, you do that naturally. You're like, oh, okay, cool. And I think the first thing me and Michelle, when we saw each other, we looked and we were like this is amazing. But the reality is, you walk into a lot of yoga, meditation, breathwork, fitness classes, it doesn't look like this, and that's just a reality. And so for me, education is really important. Compassion is also really important. Being able to hold people and to teach them, because not everyone knows what the lived experience of other people is like, and to bring them on that journey and not exclude them from that journey. And also to say there's money to be made when everyone is included. Right. That I don't think should be divorced from this conversation.
Yeah. What do you think that, when you look at the people in this room, and obviously the businesses they have and they're part of, what are the small things and the big things that they can implement? What are the calls to action that you think? Because I think so many times we have these conversations and you're like, wow, amazing, but then what do I do? What would you say? I would love to hear from all of y'all. Sandra, you want to start?
Well, I think, along the lines of asking the question, who's not in the room, I think that if we want to create more inclusion of the wellness practices that come from these long traditions that, by the way, are present already, you just didn't recognize it. I think we have to really think about, it reminds me of remember the local movement, when we started to be aware of where did our food come from? Mm-hmm. Is it local? Is it from, halfway across the world? And we began to care about that. I think we need to start to care about, what are these things we're practicing? Where are they from? Nobody ever asked that when yoga first came out, right? And so, and it's really taken, it's come really far. It's gone really far from many of its original intentions. So I think we just have to really push people, all of you here, to really think about that. Where are these things from? What is bakuchio? Where is it from? What is sika, tiger grass? I'm thinking of the Chinese name, but I think you guys all know what sika is, right? Mm-hmm. That's a very famous Asian herb. It's used in many different ways in Chinese medicine that are different than how it's being used in the beauty industry. So I think you just have to ask these questions. Where is this from? Is there a body of wisdom and knowledge that already exists around it that has proven to be powerful for millennia? And the answer is yes, if you're looking at these kinds of things coming from TCM and Ayurveda.
What about for you, Michelle? What do you think?
Yeah, I'm thinking about what you said about source and where things come from and what happens to something when we take it from its source and we're not necessarily directly connected to it through lineage. And it changes in some way. And so I think being aware of that, being accountable and thinking about what that looks like to the source culture, that's a step toward inclusion. I also think the question of who's not in the room, which I do think about and ask all the time, the follow-up question then is why? right? Who's not in the room, and then why aren't folks here? And what does that mean? And thirdly, I would say, how can I leverage my resources, my privilege, my access to power to create more space, not to just invite people into the room, because this is about, for me, it's about liberation and us getting free for everyone, and not just humans, also the more than human world. And so what do I have access to that might decrease or disrupt some of the barriers that are in the way of us getting free, be that through beauty, right, and the standard of beauty and disrupting that. And also remembering you all are culture shapers, right? You shape culture in significant, profound ways. And I think what I've observed, right, from like the sidelines for sure, is all of the ways this industry does break through barriers, does push against cultural norms, takes risks in ways that perhaps other industries do not. And so I think you're well positioned to engage in some of the skills, the steps that we've shared about inclusion, because it really is about the people you invite in who've been marginalized, not because of something that they've done, right, but because of systems. It's really about allowing them to shift and shape the culture of the space.
Manoj?
I might get in trouble for saying this, but like, it's kind of crazy to me how much representation matters. You know, like the leading yoga brand in the world, not mentioning names, doesn't have not one single South Asian representation on that. I've been selling yoga tights for 30, 40 years, however long, and there's no South Asian representation. And if you're from dominant culture, you don't know what it's like to walk into a room and to see a teacher that looks like you, or to see a brand ambassador that looks like you, or to see an influencer that looks like you. That makes such a huge difference. It connects you deeper, not only to the brand, it connects you to everyone involved in the brand, the teacher as well. So representation is really important. And then curiosity and humility. I think those two final aspects are like, ask questions. You know, there are people here that have degrees on this stuff. The brands I've worked with have just been really humble around like, hey, we don't know how to navigate this. Can you help us?
Perfect. Thank you guys so much for doing this. It's so amazing.
That was really powerful. I'm so glad that we can have that kind of conversation here. We're going to shift gears a bit. How many of you have enjoyed kombucha or sourdough bread or kefir? All right. In that case, you may already be familiar with the fascinating concept of the microbiome, a word that's already come up a couple of times already in this session. The microbiome is a diverse collection of bacteria, fungi, viruses, and their genes, which naturally live inside our gut, inside our mouths, and on our skin. And more scientific research is discovering links between the microbiome and conditions like eczema, psoriasis, dandruff, and many other things. So to better understand the science and market opportunity in microbiome products, we're very excited to be joined by three experts. Dr. Elsa Youngman, founder of AI-powered platform Hello Biome. Dr. Crystal Koo, founder of oral care line Coco Floss. And Dr. Nigma Talib, a naturopathic doctor and microbiome specialist. They'll be joining us on stage with BOF's beauty correspondent, Daniela Morosini.
So obviously you have shared ground all in the microbiome, but you have very distinct businesses. So just to start, if you could set the scene a little bit and tell me a little bit about all of your businesses. So Elsa, tell me about Hello Biome.
Hello Biome is a microbiome platform. And what we do is that we built a microbiome test kit, a bit like a 23andMe, to analyze all the bacteria, fungi that you have on your skin, And with that, we're able to build predictive model, more personalization, and we work with many consumer brand, ingredient manufacturer to build the future of beauty with them.
Great. And Crystal?
I'm a dentist and I'm a co-founder at Coco Floss. And at Coco Floss, we believe that great habits start with joy, not dread. So at Coco Floss, we're in the business of making products that both work and also that bring delight to people so that hopefully they'll be inspired to take care of their smiles.
And Nigma?
I am a naturopathic doctor and author of Younger Skin Starts in the Gut. I also formulated my own skincare and supplement line that is safe and effective and, doctor-driven.
Amazing. Okay, so Elsa, the microbiome, I think at best, most people have a superficial level of understanding. What is it in particular that you think beauty brands and wellness brands really need to know about it?
I think when we think microbiome, beyond understanding that it's a collection of a microorganisms such as bacteria, fungi, even viruses, as human, we're actually more bacterial than we are human. We have more bacterial cells than human cells. So if you work in the beauty, personal care business, me as a skin biologist, my first thought was when you take a shower, when you use a deodorant, when you apply a moisturizer, what's the impact on your skin microbiome? And that's all the good research I've been doing to understand it better.
And as your research has progressed, you've adapted your business model, haven't you? Because you had a slightly different line before?
Yes. So as a skin biologist and mother, what I wanted was to build the future of skin health and how we could nurture that on the long term. And for me, discovering the microbiome, that is a very manipulable ecosystem, it has to go through it. And naturally, I started by building the first microbiome-friendly skincare line in the US. But my problem was that I could not access at scale microbiome data. I could only partner with clinical lab that did not have access to diverse participants. We could not choose the geography, the skin tone, the age, and so on. So I had to build our own test kit to build that decentralized research platform. And when we introduced as a consumer product our microbiome test kit, what was very interesting, it was actually the industry itself who got really interested into it. And organically, we started building a strategic partnership, first with consumer brand and corporation, to collect with them at scale microbiome data for both clinical research, but also personalization. And that's how now we are fully B2B, and I stopped the consumer.
And Nigma, in your practice, what are the most common misconceptions that you come up against, either from your patients, your clients, or the brands that want to partner with you? Where is the knowledge gap?
A lot of people think that the gut microbiome, when they hear the word microbiome, they think it's just a digestion area, when actually the gut microbiome is involved in almost every disease. Hippocrates, 2,500 years ago, discussed the fact that all death begins in the gut. And in my opinion, I'll go further than that to say that actually you can cure and heal almost every disease at the level of the gut microbiome. So when you think about the gut microbiome, you have good bacteria, you have bad bacteria. It's kind of like a bustling city, right? Your gut microbiome, and you have the law-abiding citizens like all of us in here. And then you have, the gangs that come in, the bad bacteria, and they have like a war. And when we have an imbalanced microbiome, that's when the city starts to inflame. So we call this inflammation. Inflammation happening at the level of the gut, creating every single chronic disease. So when we think about the gut, we need to think about, what are we putting in our bodies that is changing the gut microbiome, that is creating disease states. And I talk a lot about poop. And I'm kind of known as a poop doctor now. So, it's a crappy job, but I'll take it. If you go on my Instagram, that's all you're going to see, FYI. But I'm trying to normalize the conversation because a lot of misconception is that the gut is just a digestive location, when really it's more than that. And for the ladies and the gentlemen in the room, it also helps your skin. When you fix your gut microbiome, you'll see that your skin is more clear. You'll have less puffiness, less inflammation. So beauty does start at the skin microbiome, and I can see all the ladies looking at me very intently. That's where it starts. It's an inside job.
Got it. And Crystal, thinking about the oral microbiome. So we talk about skin, we talk about digestion, but I think very few people know that it really begins in the mouth. What can you tell me about that?
Yes, so the mouth is possibly most obviously the primary entry point into our bodies, from our mouths to the gut, and of course affecting the rest of our health and our skin. And it is home to about 700 species of bacteria, predominantly good bacteria. Of course, there are a few bad guys in there. And it's when you have the dysbiosis, oral microbiome dysbiosis, that you get problems or trouble in the mouth. And so I will speak to the two biggest things that we as human beings are all afflicted with: gum disease and tooth decay. Gum disease basically being our body's immune response to certain bad bacteria, and it can be as seemingly benign as your gums bleed when you brush or floss to as severe as all of your teeth are falling out. It afflicts over half of all adults. Tooth decay is the most prevalent chronic disease globally. And when I say tooth decay, I mean cavities. And so between those two diseases, there's a good chance that the majority of us in this room have been afflicted by either one or both of these conditions. So as a dentist and as a creator of products, I'm just really working on helping people manage this dysbiosis and prevent and manage diseases as a result of it. And it's really interesting, the conversation around ancient practices, because TCM and Ayurveda did know something about maintaining balance. They had these practices of tongue scraping and oil pulling, both of which now there's evidence to indicate that they actually have measurable positive health benefits for one's health and overall health. It actually inspired some of my product development. So, for example, coconut oil pulling is actually trending right now, and it actually has some antimicrobial properties, not the kind a standard mouthwash, alcohol-based mouthwash would probably do too much and dry out your mouth, but coconut oil will actually inhibit cavity-causing bacteria while sparing the good bacteria and helping maintain microbial diversity in one's mouth. So our floss has coconut oil in it, but it's also really scrubby to remove plaque biofilm. I made a toothpaste. I also included coconut oil, but also wanted to include ingredients that supported the oral microbiome. I've seen thousands of mouths and patients and their mouths, and I can tell you all firsthand that when people address issues in their mouth, you do see changes in their whole body, and also vice versa. When I see people address their health, I see changes in their mouths as well. And I think in beauty especially, we're especially fixated on bright white smiles, and certainly those are beautiful, and beauty translates to confidence and self-esteem, which translates to emotional wellness. But people are not really connecting everything, because this dysbiosis in one's mouth actually is related to other diseases like heart disease, diabetes, Alzheimer's disease, pregnancy complications, and again, it's all via bacteria, right? So this is a really important conversation to have, and of course, there's the obvious part of it, what we put into our mouths, whether it's nourishing foods or junk foods, these will all, of course, play a role. So the mouth has a big role to play here.
It all begins with the mouth. So with any science, there's always new advancements that are really exciting. And of course, AI is a really big one for you. Tell me a little bit about how you're using artificial intelligence to power your microbiome research.
We use it in two ways. First, it's more like a research work that we're doing, because if you look at the skin segmentation today, we see a lot on the shelf, like oily skin, dry skin, combination skin, and then sensitive skin. But sensitive skin is 70% of us, so it's almost universal. And so the research we are doing first is we're using unsupervised machine learning by taking all the microbiome data we collect, whether it's for the face, scalp, oral, or over body area, to understand how we all differentiate through the microbiome, to understand what's our segmentation based first on those biological information. And from that, we are building clusters and training personalized tool that we call a classifier. That's a way to work. And to go a step further, we're also building predictive model to understand what ingredient, formula, or regimen will actually rebalance those specific profile based on the microbiome to really build the future of product innovation in our field. And that's what's really fascinating, because we are still so early, so at the beginning, and there's so much to uncover. It's the beginning of a long and fascinating journey.
So from everything we've discussed today, we know that consumers are very interested in wellness, and that microbiome will probably be a big part of that. For brands that are thinking, okay, it's time for us to start playing in the microbiome space, we need a product or a service, something that touches this. What are going to be the challenges that they're going to run into? Is it more the regulatory side of things, the expense? Tell me, maybe if we start with you, Nima.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of substantiation claims that are going to be the issue, as well as, overages in products. People are going to be checking, is what you say in your product. There's no regulation with the FDA. So, companies can, spit out X amount of ingredients, but how do we know that that ingredient is actually in the product? And also there's therapeutic range index, right? So how much of that ingredient is enough? And then having a doctor background, having someone like a naturopathic doctor, be, behind the brand, because, those are the experts in ingestible beauty and supplements, and, just making sure that, we cover all those bases. And I think those are areas that are certainly needed in the space.
Crystal, what about you? What challenges do you see ahead for them?
Primarily limited understanding from the consumer. So they don't know what they should be looking for, and anything that says probiotic or gut, they say, oh, I need that, but how do we know if it's good for you? Because someone in here mentioned there isn't a one size fits all, and actually I love what Elsa's doing, because I think she might have a solution to that. But it should be individualized.
Also, same for you, maybe the consumer fatigue, people just kind of getting bombarded with claims. Like, what challenges do you see?
Yes, I think the big challenge, and it's interesting to see how like Gen Z and Gen Alpha are going, like when they say they will call out brands, do their research, try to see what's the science behind the claim. If you want to build a product focused on the microbiome, don't think you should just put like a probiotic and mix it in an emulsion. It's microbiome is here to stay. It's not a trend. It's a scientific advancement, both in the medical field and the beauty field now. So it's about really doing your research, understanding the ingredients you use, trying to understand what impact they'll have, if you can afford it, to do your clinical test or in vitro test, but to really have the data to back up your claim. And if you're into personalization, I would really recommend to go beyond, just doing a quiz, because we see half of us actually don't know our skin type, so it means that there's a lot of false results without us knowing, and I think leading to more maybe skin issues. So looking at our biology first when we try to build more personalized solution is, I believe, the future.
And from the consumer's point of view, when they're choosing a new skincare product or a supplement, whatever it may be, do you think they are really motivated by the specific modalities and the techniques of the microbiome? Are they looking for those claims, or do they just want something that works, and however it works is good? Maybe, Crystal, if you start.
Yeah, again, I think because the consumers don't yet know what to look for themselves individually, they're going to look for social proof. So they're looking for, does it have hundreds of 5-star reviews, or what did my coworker say about this product? I think that will carry a lot of weight for people, at least for now.
I think people are looking for immediate gratification. Mm-hmm. They want to see that the product is efficacious. They want to know that there's research behind it, that it's been, third-party tested. But really, does the product actually work? Because in the end, that's, you can have all the marketing you want for a product, but if the product doesn't actually work, then you're going to lose your consumer.
So?
Yeah, no, I totally agree with what you said, and I would re-emphasize that people want clinical efficacy, and we talked about it a lot during the forum. And I think the issue with microbiome at the beginning, like when it started some years ago in the beauty, is that it was not linked to efficacy, but more to a new scientific concept, and it was very hard to educate the consumer about that. But now we see more and more brands that are bridging the gap between clinical efficacy, microbiome result, and actually when you get good clinical outcome, often you see also a positive result on the microbiome.
And Nigma, we were talking a little bit last night. There's so much research all of you have from your practices and from your own learnings. How do you kind of take all of that and make it understandable to the consumer, and also communicate it in a way where you're not dumbing it down so much that it's not actually truthful anymore?
I think there's a lot of jargon used in marketing, and I think we have to send a very clear message to the consumer, and it has to be clear enough because the word microbiome on its own is quite intimidating. And we know everybody knows gut. Gut is everybody knows the gut, but the microbiome and, maybe putting it in bite sizes and, giving examples and analogies that, can make it more understandable for the consumer. And also like differentiating your brand versus another brand in terms of, okay, this is the strain I'm using for this probiotic. These are the research, over 50 years of research for this particular, I created a probiotic that has over 50 years of research. So for me, research-driven products are super important as being a naturopathic doctor and making sure that the products are efficacious and they're safe and they're effective.
And thinking ahead to the future, I'm sure there is so much more development to come. The AI portion sounds fascinating, but when you kind of look in your crystal ball, what developments are you really excited about, Krista? Is there anything that's coming up on the horizon that you're keen to understand more about, or you think the consumer will really appreciate?
I am also likewise very interested to see how AI can help me and delivering what I'm trying to do. I'm trying to help people achieve healthy smiles for life because we all would like to keep our teeth for the rest of our lives. But I also realize I need to understand the consumer. And I feel like I was quite successful at doing it in private practice because I have these relationships with my patients. I get to know them, I understand what motivates them and drives them. And that made me an effective dentist because then they follow my recommendations for them. But how do I do that with my consumer that's meeting our brand online? So that is a challenge. I'm hopeful that AI will help me.
Now, I'm sure all three of you are constantly getting approached by brands and other companies that want to work with you and kind of leverage your expertise. What do they need to know before they start working with a microbiome expert, and kind of how do you like to be approached? I mean, Elsa, tell me.
Me, the first question I have is always, who's your target audience? What problem are you trying to solve? Because I want to understand where the microbiome is going to fit into it, and do I have any data or any understanding of that specific target? And for example, with the brand Freaks of Nature, who's targeting athletes, as a scientist, it was very interesting because athletes suffer so much from their skin health, from like outdoor exposure, sports, friction, that understanding how their microbiome could be affected was really a very interesting challenge. But often brands don't always have that answer about who's your target, and I think that's really what you should be asking yourself first.
Yeah, know your market. And Crystal, what about you?
What was the question?
What do they need to know if a brand or a company wants to partner with you and leverage your expertise? Is there a particular way that you like to be approached, or what do they need to know about the oral microbiome?
Well, I mean, as an individual, it's good to generally know your own history. As a brand, I guess, if a brand started to partner with us, we'd be curious to know about, the identity of their consumer, their customer. That's a tricky question for me, though, because really, I believe that oral health is for all. As I say, it's not a one-size-fits-all approach. Like, I really want everyone to be brushing their teeth and flossing. Very basic, very basic. And I'm still working on that. The minority of people floss their teeth.
And Nigma, what about you? What do brands need to know?
I think for me, it's looking at the underlying cause. That is what I would ask them, is that let's look at the underlying cause versus putting a Band-Aid approach on top and individualizing treatments for individualizing treatments for patients. I do a stool test on every patient. So if you're ever a patient, you're gonna have to do a poop test for me. So because that's how we can, really see what's happening for that individual person. So it is all about looking at the root cause and personalized medicine.
I don't think anyone's going to top that, so we'll leave it there.
I will raise my hand and say, when I first met Nigma 15 years ago, she had me do a poop test. Since then, I have done multiple poop tests, but they have all been extremely helpful in diagnosing my own issues with microbiome. And I think, what's really interesting about how the wellness space and some of the conversations that we've had is shaping this whole idea of personalization. That everyone's wellness journey is individual to them. Of course, there are general rules and principles that we all have to keep in mind, but personalization is key to optimization. Our next speaker has been in the wellness space for almost 20 years. Before wellness became a buzzword, he has witnessed the transformation of an industry focused on senior people, trying to focused on the end of their lives to one today that is focused on people at the peak of their lives looking to achieve optimal health. Alejandro Bataller is the vice president of Shaw Wellness, a family-owned wellness and hospitality company with destinations in Alicante, Spain, Cancun, Mexico, and starting in 2026, in Abu Dhabi in the United Arab Emirates. The business was founded on the principle that true wellness must be customized to the individual in order to reach an optimal state of health. Shaw Wellness has a holistic approach that incorporates both Eastern and Western medicine, and which is grounded in data and diagnostics. Alejandro will talk to us about what the past, present, and future of wellness looks like as attitudes towards longevity continue to shift. Please welcome Alejandro to the stage.
Thank you so much.
Well, first of all, I have to thank Alejandro because he got my call about a week ago.
Yes.
And flew from Madrid for 24 hours to be here with us.
I'm a bit jet lagged, so be patient with me.
Okay, we'll be patient. I wanted to start with the history of Shaw Wellness. I had the absolute pleasure and fascination to come to the Alicante, Spain location last summer. And I just, you and I had this like pretty incredible lunch actually, where you told me the history of the founding of this business. Before, as I said, before wellness was this buzzword and this like bustling industry. How did Shaw Wellness come to life?
Well, hello everyone. We're born in Argentina. So our nutrition was the opposite of what we are doing now, as you can imagine. Very strict Argentinian diet.
Lots of meat.
Lots of meat. And usually in the first half of your life, you feel that whatever you do, whatever you eat or drink doesn't impact significantly your health and well-being. And it's usually on the second half when you start feeling the consequences. And even then, most of people doesn't relate it. They think it's just genetics or statistics, bad luck, no? And this is what happened to my father. After many years of suffering health issues, mainly related with his digestive system, he was diagnosed with a cancer 22 years ago, a colon cancer. And a friend of ours told us about a doctor who was specialized in integrative medicine, very focused on nutrition. And when you have such a worrying diagnosis, you are more open about trying new things. He went to visit this doctor, and he changed completely his diet, his lifestyle. My brothers and I, we were a bit skeptic on the beginning on him putting all his confidence on a lifestyle change. And we were the first one to be amazed when he came back like 6 to 8 weeks later for a medical checkup. And doctors didn't found any trace of the original diagnosis. They told him it was a spontaneous remission, like a case, it can happen every 1,000 of cases.
A miracle.
A miracle, but of course, when you do something about it, you always connect the two factors.
So just to bring that to life a little, you talked about this lifestyle change. What was the lifestyle change from, and what was the lifestyle change to?
Okay. So, of course, before we were having red meat on a daily basis, as I would say majority of Argentinians do, red wine, Malbec, dulce de leche. I'm sure you're familiar with that part of the equation.
Wine, and dulce de leche.
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
And basically was avoiding processed food, dairy, caffeine, meat, and focusing on mainly a plant-based diet with some fish protein, mainly white fish. And then incorporating some elements that are not so common on our nutrition that can help you to digest better. Of course, he changed his lifestyle. He started to exercise, to meditate, to practice yoga. So that was pretty much the change. And this was very eye-opening for us. After seeing the results on my father, I went to visit the same expert. And I've been suffering around 10 years of very strong migraines. I went to a top neurologist in Spain. I was taking daily medication, not seeing any evolution. And when I went to visit him, changed my diet, and in a couple of weeks, I lost 8 kilos that I needed to lose, and headaches were gone. So basically, he told me it was related with an excess of toxins in my body, very related with my liver. And he was giving me the example that is, if you have a problem with your car, you take it to the garage, and you tell the mechanic to turn off the red pilot instead of seeing what the problem is. And is what we many times do in our approach to medicine, no? Focus on sick care instead of health care. So we are not physicians in the family. We became so passionate about it that we understood this as a signal. On a time, as you say, that wellness wasn't as popular as it is nowadays, and we said, this is what we want to focus our life. No, it was like finding a purpose.
That's an amazing, I mean, one of the best ways to understand the power of some of the things that people have been talking about today is to experience the own change in your health. So one of the things that you and I also discussed at that lunch was the kind of underlying philosophy of what Shaw Wellness is about. This idea of the difference between lifespan and health span, the difference between health care and sick care. What does that look like? So talk about the philosophy that underpins the experience that someone like me or another guest or patient has at Shaw Wellness.
Mm-hmm. Well, you know, in the last century, we've been able to duplicate our life expectancy. But the problem is that at least the last third part of our life, we are suffering a poor health. And 75 to 80% of the diseases we are suffering are preventable. So if I ask in this already very conscious room, if you would like to live up to 120 years, usually many people say, no, I don't want to live 120 because you are thinking you're going to be suffering depending on others, and who wants to live more in that condition? No? But if I tell you that you can reach that 100 years can be the new 60s, and you can be enjoying life, doing whatever you like to do, enjoying of your dear ones, then the situation changes. So basically, we have kept the same approach in terms of medicine that we have on the 20th century, on the 21st century. And the conversation is still being on sick care instead of being on health care. And the problem is the number of people who are ill are growing much faster than the number of health professionals. We expect that for 2030, we're going to have a shortfall of 18 million physicians in the world. So the medicine is being every time more reactive and less proactive. So if we think, is it the world getting healthier or not? The truth is, majority of us in this room, we live in a bubble. And in that bubble, we see that the people is curious and they want to learn more about it and they have more knowledge, which is the key to take care of your health and well-being. But if you look at world data, you see that unfortunately cancer continues growing, heart diseases, diabetes, neurological diseases, and on the same side you see that drugs consumption, medicinal drugs, alcohol, processed food is growing in the same direction. No? So basically, many of the problems that we are suffering are related with body inflammation. And it's about knowledge, and the knowledge starts, of course, with the physicians. So basically nowadays, physicians only see 1 day on nutrition, 1 day of tuition on nutrition in the whole career.
Say that again.
Physicians nowadays only dedicate 1 day of tuition, of education on nutrition. They dedicate, over 50% of physicians has no education on exercise, on the importance of remaining active. They only see 3 hours in the whole career on healthy sleep, on how sleep can impact your health and well-being. So even if you are lucky enough to meet a doctor who recommends you to live a healthier life, most of them won't have the knowledge to tell you what you need to do. No? So basically...
And they won't have the latest and greatest insights, knowledge, up-to-date information, because they're only dedicating a small portion of their professional practice to informing themselves. I get it.
And the change of paradigm that we are seeing, I have to say, is being led by society. It's being led by the patients. And the pandemic that we've gone through has accelerated that. No? People are looking for a solution, and when they go to their MD, they're starting to ask, what should I do in terms of lifestyle? So the same doctors are starting to see that a change is needed. No?
And those of us, who participate in a public healthcare system, as we have in Europe, in the UK, in Canada, you get 10 minutes. You can barely address, one issue in that 10-minute consultation, right?
It's fantastic to see how some institutions as Harvard, as Mayo Clinic, 10 years ago were not open for integrative medicine, and now they're incorporating in their research, in their offer, integrative medicine. So,
and when you talk about integrative medicine, you mean the blend of Eastern and Western medicine?
Yes, definitely. At the end of the day, scientific medicine, of course, it's key. The point is how we can combine that scientific approach that is key for sick care with a more holistic approach that is key for health care, which is what we've been working at for 20 years at SHA. It is challenging, and it's challenging to replicate it, to escalate it, because you need a level of coordination. You first need health experts that have this global and integrated vision on health. Then you need a level of coordination. You've been there, no? You are seeing, our guests are coming for 8, 9, 10 days. You may be seeing 40, 50 different people.
I think 40 or 50 appointments I had. Yeah.
And our goal is not just that you don't get any contradictory message. Our goal is that you don't get the same question asked twice, no? And to achieve that, not only at SHA, to achieve that on any health institution is tremendously challenging. We all had the experience going to same medicine, same specialist, and you find different diagnoses. And the patient is lost, doesn't know what to do.
Yeah. Well, for me, one of the most exciting bits was, you see this little, this is not here by accident. That was the diagnostic phase. So on the first day, there was like a battery of tests. I mean, I have never been poked and prodded and scanned, and the number of tests and samples and poop samples and every kind of sample that I had in that period, and all of that data was then made available to every single specialist that I saw. Why and how have you integrated so much diagnostic into the process?
Here we're talking about optimization. No? Let's say there are basically 3 different levels. No? One is what we are at the moment, majority of society, which is fighting against being sick, against disease. No? Second level will be doing the basics right. And that's basically education. And that should be accessible for anyone, which we're talking about the pillars: nutrition, exercise, active living, sleep, rest. And then if you follow, for example, what is happening at the Blue Zones, they talk about 2 other very important aspects, which is to have a purpose in life, and then belonging, no? The social component that is key for human beings. No? So that's doing the basic rights. But then there is the 3rd level, which is how I can take advantage of all the scientific knowledge and all the holistic knowledge to unlock my best version for optimization at any stage of your life, which is where we are focusing at SHA. So that needs to start with diagnosis. But it's a diagnosis that is not so focused on finding a disease as it would be a medical checkup on any health institution. It's more focused on how you can optimize your health. So we are measuring things that usually you won't see on a medical checkup, from physical stress, mental stress, cognitive capacity. We are using a technology that can do, I don't know if you tried when you were there, it's a brain mapping.
Oh,
we are
yeah,
able to
I
see
had that.
the performance of each area of your brain. And then we complement this with genetic testing, hormonal testing, dysbiosis, microbiota. And then you see on the screen all the opportunities that you have to optimize, to improve your health. So we built a very results-driven, very data-driven experience where you can see at the beginning and at the end of the stay how your values, your health values, your biomarkers are evolving.
So I mentioned in the introduction that you started with the location in Spain, which mostly served people from Europe, some North Americans, some Asians. Then you've recently opened here in North America, in Cancun, Mexico, and in 2026 you're opening in Abu Dhabi. I'm curious, with your very unique vantage point on seeing customers interested in optimizing their wellness from all these different parts of the world, have you noticed any patterns or specificities on, say, what South Asians or East Asians or Europeans or North Americans or South Americans, what patterns do you see in terms of what priorities people have, or what you're diagnosing in people from these different parts of the world?
Well, I would say that on any nationality you find usually two kind of people. One kind of people is the guests that come to properties like Shah, looking more for a temporary remedy, for a temporary detox. They're not planning to make any significant changes on their lifestyle. They go there to lose a few kilos, to detox, and then they continue with their lives. The second kind of people is people who are already health conscious and they're looking to evolve on their health path. They are very conscious that they are the first responsibles on their health, and they want to learn more and continue evolving. In Shah, we've managed to have, I would say, 80-90% of this second group, which is what we love as a brand, no? Because you can see the evolution, and we have over 50% of repeat guests, people who are coming usually on an annual basis. In terms of markets and nationalities right now, wellness industry is being led by basically 3 regions in the world, which is Asia, Europe, and United States. And the 3 of them have very different approaches to health and well-being. Now many properties, they all say we do 360, we do everything, because they see there is a trend on this direction. But the truth is, holistic, let's say Asian properties are very strong on the holistic components, on Chinese medicine, on Ayurvedics, and usually they have great service. It has a more spiritual connotation, but usually they're not that much strong on the scientific side. Europe is a bit of the opposite. It's very focused on scientific well-being, medical well-being, the use of technology. I would say that perhaps Europeans rely more on technology, on advances for their well-being. And this can be also tagged as lazy somehow, no? And then I would say that Americans are more focused on no pain, no gain, no? On exercise, hiking, boot camp, amazing variety of fitness activities. But also it's more difficult to find this balance in US soil between the scientific and the holistic approach. And this is what we're trying to bring to the Americas, no? Even if the Cancun may not sound as a typical wellness destination, we are in Costa Mujeres, that is 45 minutes north of Cancun. But we are merging that concept that makes us well known in Europe, in the American continent.
Okay. I just wanted to conclude by quickly touching on this point about access and education, which you mentioned, which also came up early on in the session, which is, in a way, places like Shah are for the privileged few, right? It's, there's There's accessibility issues in terms of price, in terms of location. What advice do you have for like other wellness practitioners, and even maybe for your own practice? How do we make the wellness industry, some of these like really core learnings and insights available to more people?
Mm-hmm. I think to remain with a genuine purpose is key. We should avoid the mistakes that we've seen in other industries, as food industry or pharmaceutical industry. No, we are seeing that there is a wellness boom in the world, and sometimes it's getting a bit too commercial. No? So first is keeping that genuine purpose, and when you have that genuine purpose, I would say it's a challenge that we need to pursue, even if we are focused on an approach, as you say, that is not for everyone, as is the case at SHA, how we can make this knowledgeable available to all sectors of society, how to go mainstream. The truth is, if you see what is happening on the blue zones, where you have the biggest concentration of centenaries in the world, the truth is these people doesn't have top anti-aging doctors, the people doesn't have access to state-of-the-art fitness facilities, but they're living longer than the rest of the world. And that gives us an amazing example on how doing the basics right should be accessible for everyone. But again, knowledge is power, and the key is in education. So I think that everyone that we have understood well this privileged, valuable message, we have the responsibility of sharing it with the society through books, through documentaries, through events like this. So there will be people that won't be able to access to a facility as SHA, but they should understand. And when you think, for example, about nutrition, if you think about rice, lentils, about cereals, there is a big percentage. If you think about going to the supermarket, if you take off alcohol, if you take off meat, if you take off processed food, and you add some vegetables, at the end of the day, I assure you, people think that eating healthier is more expensive. I think at the end of the day, it's having the knowledge to make the wise choices in life.
Okay. Alejandro, thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Imran. Thank you. Thank you. Much pleasure. Thank you.
It's time for our final talk. We've been spending much of this session talking about the wellness revolution, but Deepak Chopra has been at the forefront of this revolution. He popularized many of the practices, such as meditation and mindfulness, that have become part of the mainstream wellness conversation. We were honored to have him speak at BOF Voices 2023, and he kindly accepted our invitation to join us here in Napa to close the Business of Beauty Global Forum. As a global leader and pioneer in the field of mind-body medicine, Deepak is here to talk to us about longevity and the tools we all hold to achieve it. And if we're lucky, he might lead us all in a shared practice together. Please welcome the absolutely inspirational, pioneering Deepak Chopra.
Thank you, Imran, and thank you for being here. I'm not only the final speaker, I'm probably chronologically the oldest. I said chronologically, not biologically or psychologically or spiritually. There are all kinds of aging, physical or biological age, chronological age, psychological age, and of course, spiritual age. And I also want to make a distinction between what we call wellness. We've been talking about wellness all day, which is appropriate, but also something called well-being. The two are not the same thing. Okay, so wellness is all these biometrics. I'm a geek too. So you can see I have everything being measured right now, including my metabolic profile. I have haptics and all kinds of technologies. And if you look at the last 5-10 years, wellness has taken a leap. If you want to summarize the basic revolutions in the last decade, and they're not necessarily in order of importance, but I'll just list them. Artificial intelligence. It's a huge revolution. My next book is about that. It's called Digital Dharma, how to use AI to elevate spiritual intelligence and also personal well-being. So AI is a huge revolution. It's going to take a quantum leap in our wellness. Second is gene editing. It's already here. It's approved for sickle cell anemia and a couple of neurological diseases, but soon gene editing will be available for everything, including cancer, etc. So metaphorically speaking, the way gene editing works is you'll be literally able to read the barcode of a gene through your iPhone. You'll be able to delete the gene that's abnormal, mutated gene, and you'll be able to cut and paste genes like you cut and paste your emails. Huge revolution. The third revolution, and while it's a huge revolution, it'll apply only to 5% of all disease because of the third revolution, which is epigenetics. So epigenetics, according to our current understanding of epigenetics, less than 5% of disease is due to gene mutations that are fully penetrant, which means they guarantee the disease. Somebody has a BRCA gene, like say Angelina Jolie had, then she did the appropriate thing, she had a preventive mastectomy. For that, gene editing will work. But 95% of diseases are determined epigenetically, even those who have mutations. Epigenetic means that every experience you have, eating, breathing, digestion, metabolism, elimination, thoughts, feelings, relationships, emotions, imagination, all of that changes the activity of your genes, for good or for better. So if you're feeling a joyful, energetic body, love and compassion heart, clear, quiet mind, lightness of being, then your genes turn on in the direction of homeostasis, or self-regulation, or healing, for lack of a more popular word. Homeostasis, self-regulation is healing. Your genes will switch on in that direction. If you're feeling threatened in any way, if you have perception of threat, emotional, psychological, physical, then the genes will turn on in the direction of inflammation. During the COVID pandemic, we used AI actually to see who was getting sick and who was not getting sick, who was dying. And in every case, there was sympathetic overdrive. There was inflammation, there was stress, there was depression, there was anxiety, guilt, humiliation, you name it. But that was the underlying factor. And that leads to something called sympathetic overdrive. But those who had learned to activate the parasympathetic nervous system, particularly what we now call vagal stimulation, they weren't getting sick. They didn't have the inflammatory storms, nor did they have the morbidity and mortality. So epigenetics is the third revolution. The fourth is, I would say, the consciousness revolution, understanding that going back to the source of experience, which is something that people are now recognizing as pure consciousness, leads to what in the 80s I wrote a book called An Ageless Body and a Timeless Mind. That's the spiritual approach. So the consciousness revolution is huge right now. More and more people are actually beginning to understand what consciousness is as opposed to conscious experience. If you go on the internet and you ask the following question, what are the 125 open questions in science? The first two always, what's the universe made of? What's the universe made of? You'd think we know what the universe is made of. Force fields, gravity, atoms, molecules. That's less than 0.01% of the universe, just so you know. So we don't know what the universe is made of, although I have a solution for that, but I don't have time to talk about it today. And the second open question is, what's the biological basis of consciousness? Which is also the wrong question, because there's no biological basis of consciousness. Biology is an experience in consciousness. How do you know you have a biology? Because you're aware of it. Okay, so those are the big revolutions that are happening. And so we can look forward to not only longevity, but health span. We did a longevity retreat in the year 2014, where in 1 week, we saw the level of the enzyme telomerase go up by 40%. Telomerase is the enzyme that controls the length of telomeres, which measures your biological age. So 40%. And we had a Nobel laureate, Elizabeth Blackburn, as part of our study. And she was surprised. She didn't know what a longevity retreat was, but the results of the study convinced her to write a book called The Telomere Effect. So this is the revolution, health span. We know that biologically, according to the Hayflick limit, you should be able to live up to 120 years in good health and die in meditation by choice, not due to a disease. 5% is genetically determined, 95% is epigenetic. If you take care of all that, then you shouldn't die of a disease. You should die by choice in meditation, which is what the Eastern wisdom traditions say. Okay, you say, been there, done that, celebrate, go into the big meditation and take a final exit. These days, everybody's talking about their exits, but the final exit is the most important, I think. And if your final exit is not joyful, what's the point of living? Okay. So for me, health span is just those four things. Joyful, energetic body on a scale of 1 to 10. If you even intuitively feel your body is joyful, energetic, and you say 8, 9, 10, you're thriving. 6 and 7, you're struggling in some area. Less than 5, you're suffering. You probably have a disease already. And this is well-established data, by the way. So joyful, energetic body, loving, compassionate heart, clear, reflective, quiet mind, and lightness of being, lightness of spirit, lighter than a feather. You know, I was just in Egypt last week, and I went to the museum. And of course, they have this Egyptian myth that when you die and you go to wherever the pharaohs believed you went, they would take your heart and they would compare it with the feather of an ostrich. And if your heart was lighter than the feather of the ostrich, you had a good exit. Okay. So if we look at the 8 limbs of what is called Raj Yoga, which roughly translated in English is called the Royal Yoga, 8 limbs, and you look at Ayurveda, you have a complete package of longevity and health span. The 8 limbs of Royal Yoga or Raj Yoga are number 1, Yama, which is roughly translated as social intelligence. Niyama, roughly translated as emotional intelligence. Asana, which everybody knows, asana, they go to yoga studios. But the real purpose of asana is to understand that your body is not made of physical matter, but is a field of awareness. So asana literally means a seat of awareness. Each posture gives you a certain mode of knowing and experience in awareness. And ultimately, you understand that your body is not made of molecules. It's actually made of sensations, sense perceptions, images, feelings, and thoughts. That's how we know we have a body. The molecule part comes as a human construct for experience. So science models experience, creates models of experience, and spirituality goes directly to experience in the form of sensations, images, feelings, and thoughts. That's all we experience, by the way. Sensations, images, feelings, thoughts. If you can think of anything else, please come here and give the rest of this talk. And so if we know how to modulate sensations, images, feelings, and thoughts, we understand the body as a field of awareness. So that's the third principle of Royal Yoga. The fourth is pranayama, which is breath control to influence the autonomic nervous system. With your breath, you can influence any activity in your body, any activity. And I mean that, any activity. You can cool the body, you can warm the body, you can energize the body, you can calm the body, you can do anything just through breath. Okay, so that's the fourth limb. The fifth is called pratyahara, but it is now being called by scientists, being called interoceptive awareness, so proprioceptive and visceroceptive awareness, learning how to tune into the body, listen to what's happening inside your body, and then learning to regulate that through various techniques. So that's called pratyahara, withdrawal of the senses, and then turning the senses inward. That's the fifth, no, whatever, fifth. And then the last three are the most important: dharana, focused intentionality; dhyan, meditation; and samadhi, transcendence. That's all of Royal Yoga. Okay? Combine that with Ayurveda, which is daily and seasonal routines, nutrition, and micronutrients, which are now being, promoted as longevity molecules or signal molecules or adaptogens. So there's a big repository of knowledge on adaptogens, and some of them you've heard about: ashwagandha, shatavari, etc. But they are different than the signal molecules that you're hearing about these days, like quercetin, fisetin, and nicotinamide nucleotide, etc. And you use both of them as one ages, because the lining of our stomach gets thicker as we age, and so it's difficult to absorb micronutrients from your food. So it's always a good idea to add micronutrients. And the other revolution I didn't mention, it was the topic of a previous talk, the microbiome. The skin microbiome, the gut microbiome, and of course, brain health. And there is a connection between your skin microbiome, your gut microbiome, and your brain. So you combine that, all of this, you have the perfect recipe to live 120 years and have a good exit. And I mean that. I really mean that on a practical level. I'm going to be 78 this year, and I can guarantee you that my biological age is about half that. And it's measurable with all these things these days. There's nothing that you can't measure. Everything is measurable. So with that, what I'd like to do is have you just close your eyes for a moment and take you through an experience. I see I have 30 seconds left, so give me 3 minutes, okay? Or 4 minutes, or 5 minutes. Okay, so close your eyes, and we'll go through a little practice, okay? So first, focus on your breath. Just be aware of your breath. You don't have to do anything, just be aware of your breath. Okay. Of course, I mentioned there are hundreds of breathing practices, but to be aware of your breath is the first thing. Bringing awareness to your breath slows it down. And when you deepen it and you prolong the exhale, you activate your vagus nerve. Okay, so now take a deep breath in. Count 1, 2, 3, 4. Exhale 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Pause. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Inhale 1, 2, 3, 4. Exhale, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Inhale, 1, 2, 3, 4. Exhalation a little longer than the inhalation. I do the same thing every day, but I prolong it even more. So I inhale to the count of 6, exhale to the count of 12, hold to the count of 12, and inhale to the count of 6. That is 2 breaths a minute. And when you breathe 2 breaths a minute, you actually activate the vagus nerve in the direction of an ageless body, timeless mind. This is called the longevity breath. Okay, just a very basic technique. Exhale to inhale. Prolong your exhalation. Inhale, and then prolong it again. Okay, now bring your awareness to your heart in the middle of your chest. And let's do a little bit of reflection. Who am I? What am I? Am I the changing body, or am I the awareness in which the body is a changing experience? Don't try to answer the question. Just ask the question. Am I the changing body, or am I the awareness in which the body is a changing experience? Am I the changing mind, or am I the awareness in which the changing mind is an experience? Once again, am I the changing mind, or am I the awareness in which the mind is a changing experience? Who or what am I? Not trying to answer the question, but being aware of any sensation, any image, any feeling, any thought that spontaneously comes to you. Who am I? What am I? The changing body and mind, or the awareness in which the body and mind are a changing experience? Second reflection. What do I want? What is my deepest desire? Again, not looking for an answer, but being aware of any sensation, any image, any feeling, any thought that spontaneously comes. What is my deepest desire? What do I want? Third reflection. What is my purpose? Why do I do what I do? Again, not looking for an answer, but allowing any sensation, any image, any feeling, any thought that spontaneously arises. What is my purpose? And fourth and final reflection, what am I grateful for? Gratitude will open the door for you. What am I grateful for? Allowing any sensation, any image, any feeling, any thought. What am I grateful for? And now for the final part of our meditation, just repeat your name to yourself. I'm Deepak, I'm John, I'm Alice. And as you repeat your name to yourself, just tell yourself, that's my name, that's not who I am. So drop your name. And instead of saying I'm Deepak or Alice or John, say I am. with no name attached to it, no history, no memory, no past, no future. I am. I am. I am. Let's do that for a full minute. And finally, let that go. Let that phrase go. What's left? Awareness. So now, just rest in awareness. Be aware of being aware. Be aware of your own presence. Presence, being, awareness, consciousness. Be aware of being aware. Just be aware of yourself. This is who we are. Awareness has no shape, no color, no texture, no form, but without it, there's no experience. Awareness has no age. Awareness is timeless mind. Rest in this awareness. Mind and body and the physical world are experiences in awareness. They are in time, but awareness is not in time. So rest in your timeless presence. Rest in your timeless presence. Now relax into your body. Relax into your body. And gently open your eyes. So, in the wisdom traditions of Vedanta, in the wisdom traditions of yoga, in the wisdom traditions of Kashmiri Shaivism and Buddhism, there are two phrases that are very important. The first is called Sat Chit Ananda. So Sat means timeless existence. Existence is timeless. Chit means timeless awareness. Awareness is timeless. Mind is in time, body is in time. Sat, timeless existence. Chit, timeless awareness. And Ananda, timeless joy. And the other phrase that is very popular in the same traditions is Satyam Shivam Sundaram. Satyam means timeless existence, Shivam means timeless awareness, and Sundaram means timeless beauty and love. Timeless beauty and love. So the great Indian sage Tagore said, "When I see beauty, I know it as love. And love is not a mere sentiment, it's the ultimate truth at the heart of creation." When we rest in awareness, we have found the Holy Grail. Beauty, love, awareness, and timeless existence. That is what it means to have an ageless body and a timeless mind. So before I close, did you find this useful? A little more enthusiasm? Yes. So let me ask you the same question, but do not answer. Okay? Do not answer till I raise my hand, then say, enthusiastically say yes. Okay? Did you find this useful? Yes. So the question is a thought. The answer is a thought. In between is you, awareness. And it's timeless. Spiritual traditions call it the soul. So that presence was there when you were a baby. Different body, different mind, same presence. It was there when you were a teenager. It's there now. It's there all the way to dusty death. And because it is not in time, it transcends birth and death. Okay, so there's nothing more useful than that. That silent mind. Rumi said, God's language is silence. Everything else is poor translation. So thank you for the poor translation.
Deepak, if you have time for a couple of questions, yeah? If anyone has questions, please raise your hands. I will call on you in a minute. And if you have a question, try to keep it really short so we can fit in as many as possible. But while we're identifying where the questions are, please raise your hand if you have a question. When you were talking about sensations earlier, and then you obviously talked about awareness, I was thinking about two things in my own life. I did a Vipassana practice, which was all about sensations.
Absolutely.
And yesterday, when we did Manoj's breathwork class, which was really good, which is going to happen again after this session, I managed to get to the same sensations and awareness in 30 minutes as it took me 8 days in my Vipassana practice. Why did what explains that? It was the same like energetic force field thing that I felt. But one practice took me 8 days, and one took me 30 minutes.
And what was the 30-minute practice?
It's like an active breathwork class where you do belly, chest, release.
Okay, so that's interoceptive awareness, and that's much faster. But here is the key thing to remember, okay? What are the sensations we experience? Sensation of sound, sensation of texture, haptic sensations, sensation of color, shape, and form, sensation of taste, sensation of smell. The combination of these five sensations, sound, touch, sight, taste, and smell, is your body. That's how you know you have a body, or that's how you know you have a physical world. Then there are subtle sensations, and those are also sensations. Imagination. Think right now of a sunset on the ocean. You see an image? That's a subtle sensation, okay? Feelings, emotions are subtle sensations. We feel them. That's why we call them feelings, okay? So think of someone you love right now, and then feel. That's a sensation. So emotions are sensations, images are sensations, thoughts are sensations, very subtle sensations. So in Ayurveda, the physical body is the five perceptual sensations, sound, touch, sight, and smell. The subtle body is mind, intellect, and ego, very subtle sensations. So this is called the karmic body or the conceptual body. The mental body is called mind, intellect, and ego. It's called the subtle body. And then there's a third body, and that is absence of all sensations, pure awareness. That's called Ananda Vaya Kosha, the joyful body. It's beyond the karmic body, beyond the mental body, and that's the soul body. So, what you experienced in that 5 minutes is something interoceptive, using the breath and the body to experience subtle sensations. So it was much more effective. But, Vipassana is, these days, everybody is using the word mindfulness. I don't like it personally. It implies a full mind, but that's besides the point. And awarefulness is a clumsy word. But Vipassana means insight. So insight is bringing presence to an experience. Whatever the experience is, you bring presence to it. When you bring presence to an object, it becomes beautiful. Any object. Look at the screen and bring your presence to it without analyzing it, and it's beautiful. Anything. When you bring presence to an object, that's called beauty. And when you bring presence to another being, that's called love. So love and beauty and presence go together.
Okay. Apparently we don't have time for questions now because they're talking in my ear, but I have one very last quick question for you. I understand you have a lot of diagnostics. Why do you need 2 Oura rings?
This is not an Oura ring.
Oh, okay.
This is called ultra-human.
Okay.
And it's actually a little bit beyond Aura.
Okay.
And this is called no watch because the only time is now.
Okay.
It doesn't give you any time, but it reminds you to be present, but it also does metrics. This is, of course, the iWatch, and this is measuring my metabolism right now.
Okay. Well, Deepak will be around for the rest of the day, so thank you so much. Thank you.
Thanks.
All righty. Well, that marks the end of this year's edition of the Business of Beauty and Wellness Global Forum.
None of this would have been possible without the contributions of our speakers who generously shared their time and their insights. Thank you to each and every one of you. It was amazing to have you here.
We also want to thank our partners who support this event: Front Row, Unilever Prestige, Stanley Ranch, and Therabody, as well as our awards partner, Estee Lauder Company's new incubation ventures, and Sephora. And I'm sure you're all really looking forward to the announcement of who are the winners of the first ever Business of Beauty Global Awards. So that is happening at tonight's farewell celebration.
We also couldn't have done any of this without the BOF team, who has done an incredible job. I mean, incredible. Have you seen this place? They have worked across multiple time zones, across months. They're not just here, they're in London, they're in New York, they're everywhere. So please join us in congratulating them and thanking them.
The whole BOF team works on this, but I want to do a special few shout outs. We have our events director, who, like Priya, is, I think, 8 months pregnant.
We're both 8 months pregnant.
In London, and she has been up all night.
Stephanie.
Watching along, so thank you, Stephanie. I hope you can see this. Isabel, Shu, and Neve, who work alongside Stephanie and our events team, have been absolutely instrumental in making everything happen. And there's the wonderful Priya Rao, who, as you know, is very pregnant. And I'd just like to invite whoever's here from the BOF team, come on stage so everyone can see you. Nick Blunden, that includes you. Yay! Lillian is still doing her job. Can you believe this event is only 2 years old? I am so proud of this team. We've worked really, really hard to bring this all together. And I hope that you all come back and join us next year and bring a friend or two, because we're at the beginning of something I think is going to be really special. To all of you watching at home, if you weren't able to join for all of our talks, everything is available on demand exclusively for our BOF professional members. And with that, I bid you farewell until next time. Thank you.